Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, King Dio, Lord for a Grim Clover, Internet Blood Sports, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. What has been going on in the world of gaming? I have no idea. I haven't been able to keep up with anything. So much shit has been happening. So many wild announcements have been made. I can't even keep track of them all. But I think the most important, the most significant to me, the one that affects actual video game development that I think a lot of stupid plebs, people like Razor Fist, got their hopes up about was Embracer acquiring a lot of classic 90s and early 2000s IPs. Like, I believe they own, they put out Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, I think they're the people who bought Tomb Raider and Deus Ex from Square Enix. So a lot of people got their hopes up that Embracer would bring about like a glorious new SJW free age from the Western gaming industry. And honestly, I have no idea why you people thought that, because I called it immediately that Embracer would disappoint you all with mediocre bullshit. And now that Saints Row is out, the reboot that happened under their watch, I think it's safe to say what we can expect to see from Embracer in the future is low budget, broken games that have no idea what they want to be. They don't have an audience, and the development team behind it are talking shit about fans on Twitter. They're not going to try to do better. They're not going to try and like rethink what they did wrong or go back to the drawing board or go back and make Saints Row 5. Like, it has a lot of like DMC5 energy around it, where a bunch of talentless hacks who don't respect the franchise just kind of get their hands on it and just kind of fuck things up so badly that everyone just kind of just throws up their hands and refuses to buy it. It's interesting to see that like gaming feels like it's the only sphere where this happens, because when people did it with Star Wars, like, people bitched, but they still went and saw it, right? They're still going to go see the Mandalorian. It's going to take a long time, a long period of like mediocre Star Wars releases before like interest drops off. Saints Row didn't even need one release before people like started calling bullshit. The Last of Us Part 2 didn't need one release. And like, that's the interesting thing about this, is that gaming feels impenetrable for the SJWs, right? Like, if they weren't so prevalent in every industry, they would never have gotten a foothold in. If people were like actually aggressively going after these people, if there was any company out there that didn't like enable their bullshit, like, those guys would be like so far ahead of the competition, it wouldn't even be funny. But the thing is, like, the audience has made it abundantly clear over and over and over again that we don't want this shit, okay? And seeing this game fail so badly, I think the biggest SJW related disaster since The Last of Us Part 2, it's been it's an interesting thing to witness, right? Because we are seeing the collapse of this kind of entertainment, of this kind of like propaganda, of this kind of like attitude of just like, well, it's not meant for you, it's meant for this other periphery demographic that didn't like the original IP. Like, if you want to make a new game, make your own fucking IP. That's been the advice from the beginning. Don't like hijack somebody else's brand and do something like completely different and expect like fans to just eat it up just because it exists, right? And I think we've seen enough from Tomb Raider at this point to kind of expect the same thing. Like, I kind of talked about this a little bit when like the leaks came out that suggested that the team wanted Lara to be a lesbian, and I kind of came out like against that immediately as like being ridiculous and completely against the spirit of the character. For the record, I say the same thing about like all female action heroes. Like, I say the same thing about Samus Aran, I say the same thing about Bayonetta. Like, just they don't need to be in relationships. Like, period. It's not interesting. Like, they're in a relationship with you, the player, or I suppose like me, the player, because I'm the only one who plays these games. But like, I feel like seeing like Saints Row be this big of a disaster is really invigorating to me because I was really worried we are going to go through this like lengthy process of people like hyping up Embracer as being this like base conglomerate that was just like making all these older games like publicly available and like while producing high quality new ones. I I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I was seeing like a lot of people like Razor Fist insist that like, oh man, now that those evil Japanese are out of the way, like we can just go back to our based Western roots. Well, here's the thing, Razor Fist. Tomb Raider was never good. Deus Ex was never good. Like all these like classic Western franchises that you fuckers like say are like the pinnacle of gaming. Stuff like Ultima, stuff like Warcraft, stuff like Halo, like all of that was crap, okay? Compared to the superior Japanese games that came out like before, during, and after those titles, right? Like Ultima can't hold a candle to Dragon Quest Legacy, to it, for example. Like, Zelda innovated on Dragon Quest. Like you've seen like this constant growth and progression among the Japanese side of things, like coming up with cool, new, interesting ideas, themes, settings, and all like the West can do is just like, oh, we're gonna make a cyberpunk game, but there's gonna be a bunch of lesbians in it. Like that's the extent of like Western creativity and thinking in the current age, and it needs to be understood that like the West fundamentally cannot compete with the East when it comes to like video games or comic books or animation. Uh, I wonder just how far it's going to go before like the entire thing just collapses. All right, because we've kind of seen with like the Discovery merger with Warner Brothers or whatever they're doing. Like a lot of this propaganda is getting axed. Right, like a lot of these terrible cartoons that nobody actually likes are just like getting going down the shitter, and a lot of them are big on like pushing like the global homo agenda and stuff like that. People are starting to like just tune out of watching this stuff. Like after Cuties premiered on Netflix, like I promised myself that I would never give Netflix money, and you know what? I haven't. Like I've stuck with like buying physical, using Amazon Prime, and using Crunchyroll. Like people are getting turned off by this stuff. And the days of them just being able to squeeze this stuff in, like they did in the Mass Effect days, those are over. Like people aren't going to fall for the same tricks over and over and over again, right? They are eventually going to wake up and realize that something is horribly, horribly wrong. And that day is very soon. It's approaching every day. Like the situation is growing. Like if this game came out like 10 years ago, it would kind of be forgotten, right? Like the same way DMC was forgotten, right? Like, oh, eventually they'll make a real sequel. Like nobody's saying that about this game. Like nobody expects a sequel. Nobody particularly wants one. All I've been seeing is people insisting Saints Row 3 and 4 were bad, which I heartily disagree with, by the way. I actually like both those games. But I I feel this I I knew this was going to happen. Right? I knew Embracer was going to fuck it up. I knew they wouldn't be able to like do do what they said they were going to do, deliver on any of their promises. And this is the incident, I think, where that has now become public knowledge. I was right, and the whole world will kneel to the greatest author in the world, Cody Lee, and his above average opinions on video games.